All right, make a quick one now. First things first, you can come up and create a new printer, and I've set one up called my new Veho P8 for 0.8 nozzle. I have copies of the profile for different nozzle sizes, saves me going in and changing them. And when I go in to create a new profile, the basic information, you start there first and you put in the size of your print bed, which for me is 800 by 800, and I like to start my printer in the middle of the bed. I don't have limit switches for my printer because the printer's so big. It's kind of a normal thing in CNC not to bother, because I'm not really ever printing right to the edge. So that's set up. G-code, I have some start and end G-code that's pretty standard to set the extruder temperature. You can see that there. And then I usually lift the, at the end of the print, I usually lift the head up 10 millimeters. Don't need to worry about multi-material. For the extruder, the nozzle is 0.8 millimeters, and I've got that set to a maximum layer height of 0.6. I don't bother with extruder offsets because, again, the thing's so big. This will be different for different extruders. I ran a calibration test on retraction in Orca, and for my 0.8 nozzle I get a retraction of about 0.7 millimeters. That'll be different for you. And I found that I had to put a little bit extra back in after a retraction, just because I'm using the Goliath hot end, which is quite long. It's about 50 millimeters long, so normally you wouldn't need any extra length on restart, but you can play around with that. I had to turn this off, this motion ability. When that was left on, it sends extra G-code to your machine to reprogram the controller for maximum and minimums, and you don't want that. You really want to control it with the firmware, but if you need to override it, you can do it here. So once that's set up at the top for the printer, then the material itself you can add. And for me, I also did a calibration on the pressure advance in Orca Slicer and came up with a flow ratio value for a 0.8 nozzle of that. But again, that will differ for you because I think you're using probably a stock hot end, whereas I'm using a Goliath with a CHT nozzle. But there's calibration built in for that. I don't actually run any cooling as well because I print really big things, so I don't even bother with the fan or limit switches. Looks like I've actually got the retraction overwritten here, so if you put a retraction value in the filament, it will overwrite the retraction value for the machine, but you'll get a different value, of course. And then that should all be pretty much. I don't have multi-material because I've only got one print head. Start and end G-code I've got set up at the machine level, not at the filament level. So once you've set up your machine and your filament, then you can come down to here, which is your overall settings. And for mine, I'm running big things about 800 millimeters tall. I'm printing in big layer heights, usually around 0.4, 0.6. This one I wanted to try at 0.2. And because I've got a 0.8 nozzle, I'm making the outer wall 0.95. You can change all that yourself. Probably the main thing is for speed. I've got my first layer low to get a chance to get it to stick to the bottom. Normally running about 100 for the outer speed, and the inner wall is about 125. You tend to run the outer wall slower to get better quality. And for the acceleration, I've just recently turned these up to about twice as much, but I think to take 1 second to get up to the speed isn't a bad place to start. So it's possible to copy your speed settings down to your acceleration settings and start there, and then it takes about 1 second to get up to speed, and that tends to not knock prints off the plate too much. Other than that, I usually run a brim of about 10 millimeters on the outside and tear that off. But really, it's not hard to set up a slicer profile for Orca if you just start here, do this one, and then start here, do this one, and then start and set up the actual profile here in the third box, which drives all of these. Then you're done. You don't really need to get a profile from anybody else. Hopefully that helps.